Mleczko, and he's from Red Turtle, and he will show us some lessons from the Earthquake Hackathon.
Yes.
Yeah. The show is yours. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. So, welcome everyone. And thanks for coming. I hope you will enjoy my talk. Today, I will be talking about some lessons we have learned trying to reuse a bunch of social networks during the last year hackathon that was made. We wanted to just help a little bit the companies and people that were struck during the last year earthquake. And we built some applications heavily involving social networks. And this will be the topic of this talk. So let's start with a bit about me. As you already know, I'm Andrew. I'm coming from Red Turtle. We are practically a Python-based company. Most of our projects are pyramid and clone-based. And we are based near Florence at the end, a little bit to the north. And this is what we do. So, as you probably remember, last year there was a heavy earthquake in northern Italy. It was in May. And maybe there were not so many heavy casualties, but the most problematic for us was that a lot of companies were hit, which means the economy was in big shock because most of those companies were very tiny, family-based shops or good producers and so on. And when the earthquake hit, they have lost practically everything, right? They have lost their job, they have lost their houses, and they didn't have anything. So there were a lot of people and there were a lot of initiatives to help them. Let's say even to collect money and just give them as a kind of refund. But what we thought that would be better and what we wanted to do, we didn't want to just make a simple founding or a simple social money collection. We wanted to first rebuild what they have really lost. So we wanted to rebuild their companies practically. So this is, for example, one of the major problems were also this kind of producers. They were producing the famous Italian cheese. And try to imagine the situation that most of your money is in the goods that you have in your warehouse. When this warehouse collapses, practically you lose money for the next 24 months, for example, right? So this is a lot of money, and it's a huge problem because you cannot sell it because it's already broken. It is not a good quality cheese anymore. So that was practically the situation. Most of the companies that were hit and had problems were those kind of producers, right? So family-based companies. So the most important thing was, of course, to do it very fast because, as I already said, those families after the earthquake didn't have anything. They couldn't sell their goods. They couldn't take the credits, for example, to sell it in a few months. So the initiatives should start very quickly. And the important thing was not to just collect the money, but just to help them rebuild their entities and to just start selling their own things, right? So that was the initial initiatives. We didn't want to do it alone. We wanted to do it with other companies that were working in the zone in Emilia-Romagna. So we started to check with our friends, with other companies, if they are interested in the same initiative. And we have found a lot of people thinking the same way. So it was really a great moment when a lot of companies, also from the IT sector, were very trivial to get around and discuss and make some brainstorming, how we can help, how we can reuse the modern technologies and so on. And that was practically the few days just after the earthquake, that was practically the situation. After all those discussions, we knew that what is the most important to keep it running for more than 1 week or 2 weeks is the storytelling. Because if you just make an advertisement or something that is viral, even on Facebook, that, okay, we need money for this particular company because it's out of business, it can be viral for a few days, maybe a week or maybe 2 weeks. But that's not enough, right? We wanted to keep it viral for a few months, right? That was practically the challenge. That was one of the problems. So we said, okay, to keep it attracted, I mean, to keep people attracted and involved for more than a few days, we need to involve, of course, the social networks, but the way we wanted to involve them was storytelling. And I will show you later exactly how this whole thing was built. So that was the first thing. The second thing to keep the attention alive was, of course, using not only the social networks, but also all the resources like newspapers, television, radio, all those things that are really viral and can make, can advertise your idea in a nation scale, let's say, right? So now a little bit about the timeline, just to give you the impression how quickly we were able to deliver the whole project. So the earthquake hit the 20th of May. After 4 days, we have the first idea, more or less what I already said. And we have started to engage other stakeholders, other companies. After 3 days, so a week after the earthquake, we already have a landing page with the general idea of the initiative. Then the next day, practically, we have finished to collect the specifications and get the server from IBM. Another few days, we have already the design layout. Then we have made a 3 days hackathon just to practically take the developers together with the designers and everybody that was interesting to help. And in those 3 days, we were able to deliver 80% of the finished project. And then we have started, of course, before we have go live. There was also other companies that were starting to search to build a network of the companies that were in need, right? Because of course, everybody knew in fact that my cousin there or some kind of relatives had a company that were that were hit and so on. But we wanted to go live with a bunch of 5, 10, 15 already companies that will participate in the project. So practically, we wanted to fill in the content, right? So we didn't want to go live with an empty page and please come and register, right? We wanted to show that on a live example, how this whole project will be running and what is the idea behind it. So that was also happening during this period. And practically, the 26th of June, the whole thing just was online. So practically, it was 36 days, right? So in our terms, I don't know how do you feel, but in our terms, it was really quick. As you will see just in a second, it was, I mean, most of the things were done in Python. So this was really a Python-based project, and we are really happy about that. And I think also because it was Python, we were able to do it so quickly, right? I mean, Python is very fast for prototyping, but it's very fast for web development. There are a lot of nice frameworks, tools, libraries that you can just reuse, and mostly we did it. So we are really happy with that, and a lot of experiences we have found, we have learned during those 36 days. We are practically also using them, and we are taking this experience in other projects. So now you know more or less what was the context, what was the situation, and how this whole project went. Now let's, yeah, this is the address. If you want to, I can see that the colors are a little bit not exactly as of my original slide, but I will publish them on SlideShare so you can see the original version. Anyway, this is the address, the facciamadesso.it. Facciamo adesso means let's do it now in Italian, more or less. So the site is up and running, but the project is already over. So after 12 months, we practically have closed it because there was no need to keep it running, and practically we have helped a lot of companies during those 12 months. So the site is more right now as an archive. You cannot register anymore, you cannot buy anything, but you can still see everything, right? So if you are interested and curious to see it live, you can check it. So, as I said, to keep the story on and on, just to make it live and viral, we wanted to use the social networks, right? So this is, of course, the first thing probably everybody will say. Just use Facebook, right? Or Twitter, or just push everything there, and people will start to like it because this is completely, zero cost, right? What's the cost of make a line? It's nothing, right? So, of course, that's true, but we didn't want it to just do it like that, because probably everybody has some experiences with running some projects on social networks, and the basics are very easy, but the problem starts when you want to make the level and make the whole system more complex. Then the problem starts. So what you will probably notice at the beginning, when you start to really heavily use the social networks APIs, is that sometimes the problem is speed. Facebook sometimes is also slow. Twitter sometimes is also slow. And you cannot wait. You cannot tell the user to wait until the whole backend process will finish to publish something on, for example, on Facebook, right? We have noticed that when that you can also find problems that the API is responding in 3, 4, 5 seconds, right? This is not acceptable. So you cannot make it completely, of course, synchronous. You cannot just wait. You cannot ask user to wait for that. There are also probably, this is also quite understandable, there are rate limits, right? So some of the social networks will ban you if you will, I don't know, try to make 1,000 requests per second and so on. So sometimes you would like to do it. You don't need to probably use it in per second, but you don't want to make any additional logic in your code, and you would like to make a queue or something to fulfill those limits, right? And last but not least is the stability. You will also probably notice that some of the social networks APIs will fire strange response codes, not exactly as it is documented. It depends on the social network, of course. So you would like to also be sure that your code is aware of that, and it will never fail. So what we have found, as the best solution for those problems is Celery, right? It is great for that because it's asynchronous, it's fault tolerant, and it is distributed, so it can solve most of the problems that you have, probably trying to integrate with social networks, just simply reusing it. So right now I will try to go deeply into the code and show you some examples. But even if you will already have some experience with Celery, probably you already get the point that just using the Celery as it is, you can fix most of the problems that you have with social networks, at least those that I have mentioned. Okay, so let's check how the whole application was built. How we have integrated those things. So this is more or less the whole application. You can find it on GitHub. I mean, we are using build out for the deployment, so you can just, if you are curious to play with it, you can take the build out and run it and see how everything works. So for the Plone side itself, I mean, for the CMS and all the user interfaces and so on, we are using Plone, right? So it's a very good CMS. And that was also one of the reasons how we are able to finish the whole project in this very short time, because we have a good experience with Plone sites. So that was for us practically a 1 day. We have spent practically maybe 1 day of all those 36 days to just design it, make it run, add some custom objects and content types, and that's it, right? So the majority of the time we have spent to make this custom integration with Pyramid, Celery, and the social networks. So as you can see, the first part is the Plone, and the second part is the notification app, let's say, which is exposing some REST API. We could build this integration with Celery directly into Plone, probably, but we have also other applications that are not here explicitly shown that were also reusing this notification layer. So it was mainly Plone that was pushing things to this Pyramid app, and later Pyramid was pushing it through Celery to, as you can see, to social networks, but also sending SMS. And also we have used it to send emails. I mean, to have everything in one generic application. But there were also other connections, not only from Plone. That's why we have extracted it as a separate layer. So, and this is more or less how the layout was designed. So here you will be able to see how a company and a potential customer could buy product. Because now I need to tell you a little bit about the second part of this Plone part. Because the first one was the storytelling, and that's the most important thing. But just telling the stories that we are a company need is not enough, right? We wanted to also give the possibility, some kind of platform. We can call it even an e-commerce platform, but it was not the full e-commerce. To also allow people to engage, to approach those companies and make a trade, right? Make a deal. So there were companies that were able to register on that site, make their company profile, and add some products. So Parmigiano cheese or aceto balsamico, or even we have at a certain moment we were really surprised because we have few thousands different products after a few months, and there were products like bicycles, cover sheets, gloves. I mean, all kind of things that people really wanted to sell because, I don't know, their warehouse collapsed. And we thought that it would be mainly food or this kind of goods, but we have realized after that it was practically everything. So, and it was nice. So there's the first type of object or content type is the company profile, and it looks more or less like that. You have, of course, all those company stories, and of course the products listed, and finally you can find it. I mean, find the address. And the second part is the product. So, and here is the small e-commerce part. I mean, we didn't want to make it really e-commerce. We didn't want to just replicate eBay or other platforms because you could, if you would really like to sell, you can just reuse existing e-commerce platforms that are made for that. As I said at the beginning, the main focus was on storytelling. So for us, the product and company is just the content based on which we want to tell the story. So here, for example, okay, you have this aceto balsamico that you could buy, and it is, as you can see here, it is in Italian written that you can just only book it, right? You cannot actually buy it because the whole deal was to click on the button, register, and say how much you want, and then practically the mail and SMS was sent to the producer, and the connection and the real deal was made offline. And this was also one of the ways we wanted to make people engage in the real life, right? Not only using computers, but also just, and this was really super, and I mean, we have noticed after a few months that, for example, for those small producers, it was also very, it was a very positive reaction that people were really coming, I mean, their customers were really coming to their warehouses, and they were really actually buying, I don't know, Parmigiano, all those goods that were to sell. And they were able to tell the story how everything, and that was practically also one of the things that just came up. We didn't project it, we didn't plan it, but this real life relationship between the producer, so the business owner, and their customers was also one of this very very positive. So going back to the screenshot. So actually what you can see here is that is the booking and all those people that were actually buying the, in this case, aceto balsamico, right? So here is one by Lodi Claudia, by some username Isabella, and so on. And of course, you can leave a comment we have been using for that discuss, as you probably are familiar with. And here you can see actually the form when you are passing the quantity, you are register it, also using social networks, of course, and you just book it. And that's the end of the whole process, right? So if there's a company, it has some products, user register and book it, and then both sides knew their phone numbers or other ways of communicate, and they communicate and finish the transaction offline. Okay, so that was mainly, of course, what I have just shown. That was the blown part, right? So the user interface, the one that was exposed to the user. Now I will tell you how this pyramid and celery part was designed, and I think that's the most interesting part. So, how to organize tasks? They need to be small. This is what probably you will read in every Celery, how to example manual, presentation, whatever. I mean, that's the key, right? If you try to put too much complexity, I mean, exactly. You can put complexity into the task, because the fact that the task is small doesn't mean that it's stupid or doesn't do anything. I mean, there need to be some kind of complexity in the task, right? But you need to avoid things that can go wrong, and you don't have a control in your particular task. So apart of the fact that they need to be small, they need to be, of course, atomic. And this is what I mean by small. So in our case, it was preferably one third-party API call per task. So if you want to push something on Facebook wall, you just make a task for that. If you want to register a user on a social network, you just make one task for that, and so on and so on. And of course, they need to be in a minimal state. So you are, of course, for instance, you are not passing the instance objects as an argument of the task, right? You are passing the primary keys, and you are getting the objects in the task, right? So all the task arguments should be primitive. That's the key. So here you have an example of this very tiny task that is posting something to Facebook, right? So the arguments are Facebook ID and actually the message, and that's it. You are using the request library. We are using the request library here, and that's the end practically, right? So as you can see, it's super minimal, but it's doing its job, and it's that simple. Here you have something more complex, a little bit. So you have, we are using another API. We're using another web service that was responsible for sending SMS. But again, you are building the payload, and you are passing it as a parameter to another REST API. Here, in this example, of course, you can see how you can actually make your task fail-proof. So of course, as I said at the beginning, this is the example of the SMS. But in the case also of Facebook or Twitter, you need to be aware that you can have a timeout exception raised or any other strange response code that you can easily handle by try and accept, and then you can normally retry and rerun the task. Right? Celery is practically also made for that. So just reuse it. But you can only do it if your task is minimal and atomic. If you try to put too much complexity into your task, it will be very difficult to really rerun your task. So, what about the rate limits? The rate limits, again, it's really super easy. I mean, super easy if you just want to do it like we have in this example, right? What we did. We wanted to be sure that we are not spamming the, for example, the SMS, right? So there were at certain peak hours, people are really buying a lot of cheese, for example, right? So there was one producer that was selling 100, or maybe 100 not, but 50 items in a few minutes. If we will not use the queue, we will not use the rate limits, we'll probably send 50 messages in a few seconds, right, or in 1 minute. And it was not exactly what probably the owner of this phone was expecting to have. So using, for example, this simple rate limit 1 per minute, you can just tell to Celery, okay, execute this task once per minute, and that's it. And you are sure that you will never spam somebody's phone. Here you have the example with not spamming a Facebook wall, right? Again, you can say that you run this task five times per hour, right? So again, it's very simple. But it's simple only if the rate limits that you are struggling can be catched like that. Because, for example, there are some gotchas that you are also able to solve using Celery, but they are not so easy. So, for instance, when your worker daemon fails, all the rate limits restart, right? And this is what we have noticed. So if you have everything super configured, and then suddenly Celery dies, and you need to restart the daemon, all the limits are restarted and they are reset. And you need to live with it. So I didn't find any good solution for that. Other problems are with the multiple worker daemons. It will not work. And of course, what I was saying before, the external rate limits, they are based on strange factors. So for example, and this is what I will show you in a second. For example, like that. What you are asking for. So you cannot say that all Twitter calls have this rate limit. Because if you ask for a settings, you get 350. But if you make a search query, you will get 180, right? And this is, of course, you can also put this logic inside your task. That's not a problem. But if you are familiar with some social networks API, you will notice that those factors sometimes are very complex, and to put this complexity back into your task, sometimes it's very difficult. So, of course, you can avoid some rate limits, but not all of them. But I think it's not so bad. So that's more or less, I mean, if you are interested to see I didn't want to put here a lot of code because everything is in the build out. So if you are interested to see all the code examples, how we have been connecting with Facebook and how was the different configuration was happening there, you can check the code. I think it's very small and it's very self-explanatory. But I will also show you right now what was exactly the result. So just to give you the impression that this was not, we were not just only pushing information to Facebook and Twitter, let's say just to the wall, because we wanted to engage users. So we have registered I don't know if anybody is familiar with Open Graph and made some Facebook application. Okay, some of you. Okay, so what we did, we have registered the Facebook application, and we have registered some actions and objects. You can actually do it. So this will allow you to customize the output of what you are pushing into the timeline of your users, or even of your application page. So probably you are familiar with Foursquare. When you make a check-in on Foursquare and you select that, also publish this on Facebook. The post on Facebook is not exactly the same as an ordinary post, right? It has a map, it has some additional actions. I mean, it is customly based. I mean, it is customly designed. And this is what actually you can do with, I mean, you have this possibility. It is not only for Foursquare or for other applications. You can also do it for your own applications. And we did it, and we have registered very simple actions, like a company is selling something, a user is buying something. And this was automatically showing on their timeline. So every time a user was ordering an item on Facciama, so it was published back on his, if he, of course, registered using Facebook and allow all this security, it was published back on his profile. And this also gives you additional virality, gives you additional traffic, and engage people a little bit. So this is what I would like to show you right now. So that's the result. So for example, first of all, of course, you notice that, okay, this is very simple, a custom post, right? Because, for example, you can see you can add a custom links and custom types, so you can design additional actions inside your post. Because a normal post is practically just a text, and you don't have any additional actions. Here, for example, you have an Italian version, compra questo prodotto, which is just buy this product. So if a company was selling something on Facebook, you have automatically a link that will post you not to the view of the product, but will actually redirect you to the forum where you can actually buy the product, right? So this is what you can. This is, I know that it looks trivial, but it is like that. But at the end, it is working, and it gives you really a very good engagement of your potential users. Another example is this one is, if I see correctly, a company profile, right? So if the new company registers, there's another way of showing it. Then you have here a new company story was published. Again, a different view. And here you have a new story that was made by the editors, was published, and then the engagement. So those are all the ways that, and this is, of course, we have just only touched the surface because we didn't have too much time. That was our first application that was Facebook-based. We did similar also for Twitter. Of course, Twitter don't have this complexity. I mean, it's not allowing you to, of course, make this complex redesign of the post, but they have introduced also the cards. So there's also, when we have, I think, started to develop the Facciama Adesso project, I remember, I think they didn't have yet, it was not open to all the companies. So I don't know if right now you can do that actually, but at that time I think it was not so possible. So that was as I said, that was our first Facebook application. So we just touched the surface. If you are interested, the documentation is really great. So you can actually really do everything there. You can change the layout of the post completely. You can also include maps, different numbers. There are certain type of predefined layouts you can reuse. And using the Celery, it's really easier because you just completely, you can just forget about all those speed problems, all those rate limits problems, and also you will be sure that the code is completely failure safe. And that was practically the lessons that we have learned. So if you are interested in, if you have a Python application and you would like to connect and make something more, you reuse the social networks. I strongly recommend you the Celery for that. I think it's quite popular in Python community, so Maybe you have been using it for other purposes, but this is one of the purposes that is, I think, also good for that. There's another talk. I don't know if somebody was attending DjangoCon in 2012 in US. Somebody? So you can Google it. There's also David's talk, very similar to that one, that I was also taking some ideas when we have been developing the Facciamo adesso. So he was showing much more code, and he was showing much more examples how to integrate with social networks. So just search DjangoConf 2012, or even you can search Celery and social networks. If you are interested, I can also publish this on Twitter. So I strongly recommend you to use Celery with social networks. And that's it. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for the talk. Celery is very nice, but I'm wondering if there's a way to group notifications instead of saying I'm going to send a notification per minute. I want to group notifications for 5 or 10 minutes and send them all at once. Do you know if there's something that allows to do this?
I get your point, but I think just simply using Celery, you're not able to do that, I think. Or maybe somebody else has another. I think there's a better answer probably.
Well, hi. That was one of my points I wanted to say. Actually, queuing all notifications, whether emails, SMSs, or Facebook pushes, we do that with Redis. We just use a Redis anything queue in and just take all elements that are available in there and sort them by usually the user. So you send one SMS that you have 20 new orders and one email and one Facebook notification. That's a really convenient thing, and you don't have to actually care about those rate limits because they are not reliable at all, especially if you have
for the SMS for the SMS
distributed environment, then they are not reliable. So another thing is actually have you done authentication with Facebook also through Celery or just regular? Yeah.
No, we have been using Velarus for that. So practically we use proxy, right? So that was synchronously and just working.
Okay, so we do the same. And another thing is just a remark that you can actually use custom actions in regular wall posts on Facebook. They are just not in the main layout. They are after the standard Facebook actions at the very end of the post.
Yeah, I know, but then you will lose the share action, and you cannot easily reproduce that. Because I think the last action.
No. It's after the share action, I believe. Or at least it was at some point.
Okay, so I will check it because
one more thing is you can change the layouts of Open Graph posts only for pre-made actions. So when you add your new action and you want a custom layout, you need to talk to the Facebook development team.
Sure.
And
what I mean by custom layout was the predefined layout that is my probably shortcut. You don't need to use the standard one. You can use the
you can use the map or audio track or anything that is
exactly.
predefined by some big corporation. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else?
Thanks. Hi. Do you deal with a transaction manager when you create your task?
Or could you repeat?
Do you deal with any transaction manager?
You mean for the transaction manager for the transactions, the e-commerce transactions, or
no, the DB transaction. For example, for consistency, you create a task, then an exception happens, and you want to roll back everything, and you want to make sure that the task won't be consumed. Did you deal with this?
No, we have been using Celery. I mean, the whole project was, apart of the fact that it was really successful, we didn't generate an enormous traffic, right? So we didn't distribute Celery on multiple daemons and so on, we have been using practically everything on one machine. So we have been going, let's say, out of the box solution. We didn't use any custom transaction managers for that. So everything, practically we have been using Redis for the storage. So it was working.
First of all, I wanted to ask you about RQ, which is another queue service software, if you could maybe compare them. And secondly, did you get any statistics on visitors, traffic, and how does it look like?
Yeah, if I will start maybe with the second one, because if it's about RQ, in the moment when we have been projecting the whole Facciamo Adesso project, we have already before some experience with Celery, with other our projects, so we didn't investigate any other queue managers or similar solutions. So I know more or less about it, but I'm not able to compare it, so I will not, probably somebody else can do that better. If it's about the second question and the statistics, I don't have them on my mind, but as I said, we didn't have any performance problems, for instance. So those peak numbers were in the, I don't know, maybe Massimo, do you remember the statistics more or less on Facciamo Adesso, the peak numbers?
We had a huge boost at the very beginning because it was just after the earthquake. We arrived to, I think, 20,000 visits per day in the very first period. Then after the few months, it decreased a lot because the event wasn't so interesting.
Yeah, I think at the end we have ended with several thousand Facebook users that were using the application, but that was this range more or less. So as I said, it was not, we didn't hit any performance problems, so we didn't use any distributed versions, we didn't deploy it in a scalable environment. We have been using practically a very simple deployment, so everything was running for that scale. Any other questions? Okay.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you very much.
I would